Since the inception of this series, Oliver Grayson has been a clear fan favorite. Considering we have been asked in every video's comment section to make a video on him, now is finally the time. Making his debut in episode 4 of season 2 of Invincible, Oliver Grayson is the son of Nolan Grayson and the half-brother of Mark Grayson. Oliver is a complex character and one who we see a lot of character development from over the series. Oliver is very much like Damian Wayne from a personality perspective, and his actions often seem selfish, but he is one of the most interesting and well-written characters in the entire series, and his journey is a wild one. As always, keep in mind that this video is not going to cover every single issue, panel, or conversation that Oliver is in, but it will cover the vast majority of the most important elements of his brief, or not so brief, comic book history. Additionally, in order for the story to make the most sense, I may not necessarily cover every single event as it occurred exactly in the comics chronologically, but rather in a way that presents itself most logically, so from his origins to the end of his story. With that being said, here's the complete history of Oliver Grayson as told by the immortal. Oliver Grayson made his comic book debut in Invincible issue number 26, written by Robert Kirkman and illustrated by Ryan Ottley. In this arc, Mark is taken to the planet Thraxa by an alien who claims they need Mark's help to stop a cosmic threat from destroying their world. Upon arriving on Thraxa, Mark discovers that his father, Nolan, had become the planet's ruler and sent for him. This revelation is a massive shock for Mark, who hasn't seen his father since their horrific battle that drastically changed his life and nearly ended it as well. Despite their tumultuous past, Mark and Nolan share a heartfelt embrace. Nolan explains to Mark that he needs his son's help to defend against the imminent Viltrumite invasion. We learn that Nolan had sought refuge on Thraxa and became their champion. According to Thraxan customs, the oldest living Thraxan assumes rulership. Due to the Thraxans' short lifespan of only a few months, Nolan, being the oldest, holds both the title of their greatest hero and their ruler. Nolan confesses to Mark that his time on Earth with Debbie and Mark changed him. He no longer identified with the ruthless Viltrumite conqueror that he once was, which made him a threat to the Viltrumite Empire. Aware that the Viltrumites would have learned of his abandonment of Earth by now, Nolan chose to flee, believing that conquering another world might result in a less severe punishment. Within a week after leaving Earth, he stumbled upon Thraxa, and due to his advanced age, he was elected leader almost immediately. But the really surprising part? That wasn't all Nolan got up to in those few weeks.
Nasty.
He went and got himself a wife, a Thraxan woman named Andressa, and they had a kid, a half Thraxan, half Viltrumite baby, Oliver. So suddenly, Mark's got a brother. But the funny thing is, he isn't actually Oliver yet. Thraxans let their kids pick their own names later on in life, so he's actually unnamed at this point. Also, because of the Thraxan DNA, this baby ages incredibly fast, and he's only 3 weeks old, but he looks like a year-old already. The Viltrumites show up on the planet hunting for Nolan, and a wild fight breaks out between Nolan and the Viltrumites. Mark heads to a Thraxan ceremonial cave and tries to keep Andressa and his baby brother safe, but Lucan, another Viltrumite, shows up and calls out Mark for a fight. With some help from his dad, Mark takes Lucan down and they lay low in the cave to avoid being spotted by the other Viltrumites. Later on, Mark and Nolan gear up to take on the rest of the Viltrumite forces, and like every fight in the series, it's a brutal showdown. Blood, guts, the whole 9 yards. After the dust settles, Nolan's back is broken and Mark gets knocked out cold. When he comes to, it turns out that the surviving Viltrumites were actually impressed by his skills, and now they want him to be Earth's new ambassador to the Viltrum Empire to finish what his dad couldn't, conquering the planet. So after this, Mark helps rebuild Thraxa, and Andressa asks him to take her and Nolan's child back to Earth because his lifespan is way longer than the Thraxan. Nolan even theorized it could be hundreds if not thousands of years, just like a pure-blood Viltrumite, albeit with his initial aging being accelerated. Mark reluctantly agrees and returns home with his younger brother. He fills in his mom on what went down on Thraxa, the kid's origins, and Andressa's deal for him to raise his brother. brother. Debbie's obviously not thrilled that Nolan built a whole new family so fast, but she's a good person and agrees to take care of the child. Cecil Stedman handles all of the paperwork and back-end stuff to make the adoption legit and get the baby registered on Earth. Later on, Mark heads out to visit Adam E. with his girlfriend Amber, but things take a wild turn when Angstrom Levy breaks into his house and holds Debbie and Mark's baby brother hostage. Cue an intense battle between the two, which ends with Angstrom being defeated. For all those juicy details on that showdown and the events that led up to it, go check out Angstrom's video. In issue number 35, things get interesting when April Howsam, a super specialized private tutor, shows up at the Grayson household. Cecil Stedman sent her over to help deal with the unique challenge of teaching a kid who ages like watching this video on 2x speed, which I know you're doing. During her initial conversation, April asked Debbie if she had chosen a name for the child, which she responds with, drumroll please, Oliver. So Oliver Grayson it is. So April starts clocking in daily with Oliver, and over the course of roughly 1 month, Oliver ages to a young boy, and he is now fully capable of speech, reading, writing, math, all that fun stuff. His advancement is amazing under April's tutelage, and he also started calling Debbie, quote-unquote, Mother Debbie, which is equal parts cute and creepy. Just a few weeks later, Mark swings by the house to catch up with his mom and Oliver, only to discover that Oliver's Viltrumite powers have manifested way earlier than they did for Mark. From this point on, Mark juggles his time with being a hero, failing college, and training his brother to use his powers effectively. And it's super important that Mark puts in time into training Oliver because Oliver's a lot younger than Mark was when he got his powers. And if he doesn't learn to use them responsibly, it could lead to some serious trouble down the road. And that, my friends, is what we call foreshadowing. Oliver continues his development at a rapid rate, but beginning in issue number 47, Oliver starts to stretch his heroic legs. Mark is fighting two low-level villains named Mag Maniac and Tether Tyrant, who he has previously fought during his first run-in with Machine Head's organization, you know, the whole Battle Beast fight. Oliver then helps Mark win the fight against these two villains. Following a battle with Doc Seismic that leads to the revelation that Cecil Stedman has been working with Darkwing, D.A. Sinclair, and an army of Reanimen, there is a massive falling out between Mark and the Global Defense Agency. Starting in issue 51, Mark no longer works with Cecil and begins training his brother more seriously in all aspects of Viltrumite combat. But more importantly, Mark takes Oliver to Art Rosenbaum and has a super suit designed for him. And Oliver picks out his own superhero name, Kid Omni-Man. This isn't great. See, Mark is worried that Omni-Man isn't looked upon favorably on Earth that much anymore, you know, because of the murders. Naming Oliver Kid Omni-Man would not be a great look for the young hero. However, this leads to some contention with Oliver, who only knows his father as a benevolent hero to his former planet and their people. Oliver believes that by being a hero and sharing his father's former superhero name, he may be able to help redeem Nolan in the eyes of the people of Earth. So Mark reluctantly agrees with Oliver and lets him use the name. Oh, also Mark gets a new blue suit that's absolute fire, no notes. In the same issue, Oliver and Mark stop a Russian villain named Kursk, who is actually the arch nemesis of Red Rush, one of the original Guardians of the Globe. Fun fact for you. Kursk and another villain, Furnace, are attempting to break Duplicate's brother, Multi-Paul, out of prison. During the fight, Oliver gets electrocuted by Kursk, but the two brothers are able to foil the prison break. In the very next issue, things start to change with Oliver a bit. The character starts to be less lighthearted kid, yay, and more angsty teenage super murderer. The Mauler twins take over a nuclear silo, and Mark and the Guardians of the Globe are dispatched to stop them. Mark has to deal with a nuclear warhead in space, so he isn't around when Oliver arrives to help. But due to his lack of control over his powers, he murders both Maulers accidentally. Oliver claims he didn't mean to kill them, but he certainly didn't hold back. Cecil arrives and cleans up the mess, and Mark takes Oliver into the sky to discuss what transpired. It's here we see Oliver's true thoughts start to manifest. Oliver is far more ruthless than Mark was at a young age. He tells Mark it's illogical that he hadn't killed the Maulers in the first place, considering they have fought multiple times and continue to break free and hurt or kill other people. He doesn't understand why killing every single villain is bad when it can save lives. Mark tells him that human life is precious, and in one of the coldest statements in the series, Oliver says, "No, it isn't." Oliver's justification is that humans don't treat their lives with respect, and people kill each other every day, so why should he treat their lives with care and compassion? Mark notices that Oliver sounds a lot like his father did during their battle at the beginning of the series, and maybe Mark even starts to agree with him a little bit. In the next issue, Mark and Oliver somewhat make up, but we also learn that Oliver doesn't feel like he relates to Earthlings at all, which Mark doesn't understand because Oliver was, raised on Earth. Oliver states that he has perfect recollection of every single event in his life, and he can remember conversations that were had around him as a baby, even ones he didn't understand at the time. This explains how he is able to retain information and learn at such a rapid pace. Ultimately, the two make up, and Oliver agrees to try and give the people of Earth a chance. He even tries his hand at stopping a villain by himself, but, gets confused. He's still a little kid at the end of the day. Jumping forward a bit, Oliver is involved loosely in the Invincible War against Angstrom Levy and his gang of interdimensional Mark Graysons. Oliver fights multiple interdimensional Marks and even takes a shot at Angstrom himself before Mark faces off against him. After it's clear that Mark has beaten Angstrom, Oliver begs for Mark to kill Levy. Literally begs him to kill this monster who keeps attacking their family, to which Mark reluctantly agrees, although Angstrom is able to eventually flee. For more information on this, again, please check out Angstrom's video. Fast forward to the end of issue 61, and we see the arrival of every comic book reader's favorite villain, Conquest. Still reeling from the Invincible War, Mark is forced to fight the Viltrumite agent Conquest, who is charged with making sure Mark is making progress on conquering the planet. Spoiler alert, he's not. So Mark and Conquest begin their battle, and Oliver randomly jumps into the fight to help assist his brother. Oliver tries to team up with Mark to fight Conquest, but Conquest breaks his arm, beats him badly, and almost pulls him apart like a nice mozzarella cheese stick. The remaining battle is absolutely brutal, but Mark ends up beating Conquest with a lot of help from Adam Eve, who Conquest nearly kills, but her ability to self-regenerate automatically when on the verge of death saves her. Her powers become unbound and causes a massive Kamehameha-like blast to obliterate Conquest's skin, which helps Mark turn the tide of the battle. Afterward, in the hospital, Mark visits Oliver, who is recovering quickly. Mark tells Oliver that he was right, and from now on, he won't hesitate to kill anyone who hurts the people he loves. The next time we see Oliver is just a few weeks later, and he has grown significantly older. And he wants to go by the name Young Omni-Man, which sounds like a horrible, bad rap name or a Fortnite username. In issue 70, we learn that Oliver's aging is now starting to slow down due to his Viltrumite DNA. He's still aging quickly, but it's slowing drastically, and he may not turn into a full adult for another year or so. Oliver also starts loosely working for the GDA, considering by this point he is one of the most powerful heroes on the planet. Nolan eventually returns to Earth as a member of the coalition of planets who are prepared to start an assault against the remaining Viltrumites. He tells Mark and Oliver that he needs their help to wage the Viltrumite War. So the group heads to space but are intercepted by Conquest, who had survived his battle with Mark earlier and is now fully healed. And he brought backup this time, multiple Viltrumites ready for battle. Oliver engages the Viltrumites, but proves to be far weaker than the purebloods who absolutely manhandle him. The fight eventually ends with Mark and Conquest alone on a planet where they're finally able to finish their battle. Mark is wounded pretty badly in the fight and nearly dies in the process. For more information on the Viltrumite War, check out Thetis' video. Over a period of weeks, Nolan and Oliver help Mark recuperate from near death on this planet and spend time together getting to know each other and how their lives have been, but are unable to assist Thetis in the Viltrumite War until Mark is fully healed. Nolan takes this time to begin training Oliver in combat and push his strength and speed further than Mark had been able to. Mark finally heals and the group travels to assist in the Viltrumite War, arriving just in time to help beat back the forces of Grand Regent Thrag, the leader of the remaining Viltrumites. A significantly older and far more muscular Oliver, along with the bearded Grayson boys, attack Thrag and are successful in beating back his forces. Oliver is chosen as a part of an elite force to bring the final fight to Thrag's forces, along with Nolan, Mark, Battle Beast, Tech Jacket, Space Racer, and Alan. The group travels to the planet Viltrum and attacks the Viltrumites head-on. We've covered this battle many times in multiple different videos, so for the interest of time, know that despite growing significantly stronger, Oliver is beaten badly by Thrag and forced out of the battle and is presumed dead. Mark and the others are successful in destroying Viltrum and ending the war against Thrag, sort of, kind of. Oliver is then transported back to Taliscria and fitted with a cybernetic enhancement to speed up his recovery. Oliver isn't seen again for 10 issues, but during that time he decided to live on Taliscria with Alan, who had now been promoted to the leader of the Coalition of Planets. Oliver tries his hand at fighting crime on the planet, mostly to test out the strength of his body following rehab. The next significant thing is that Alan decides to release a new and improved version of the Scourge virus, which is the virus responsible for killing 99% of the Viltrumite population, and he's going to distribute it into Earth's atmosphere to kill the remaining Viltrumites who have chosen to take up refuge on Earth as a part of an arrangement with Mark following the end of the Viltrumite War. When Nolan hears about this, he fights Alan, but is overwhelmed by the collective might of Alan, Alan's forces, and Oliver, who ultimately sides with Alan. If Nolan was going all out, he might have been successful in this battle, but he couldn't bring himself to hurt Oliver due to what he had done to Mark at the beginning of the series. Oliver then travels with Alan to Earth in order to help release the virus. He doesn't really care much for the people of Earth, considering their history of, being assholes to each other. Alan and Oliver travel to Earth and are met by Mark, who they tell their plan to. Mark obviously is like, no, not cool, let's fight. And they fight. Mark fights Alan and Oliver, who prove to be pretty strong. Mark may have been defeated if it wasn't for Thrag arriving and forming a temporary partnership with Mark to avoid the release of the virus. Alan, now painfully aware that the Viltrumites know of his plan, is offered a truce by Thrag, who reluctantly may have agreed to his terms, but the Guardians of the Globe arrive to intercept, mucking up the peace talks. Oliver grabs the virus dispenser and flies into the atmosphere, attempting to release it on the planet to stop the Viltrumites once and for all. He is intercepted by Mark and accidentally infects Mark with the virus. The rest of the planet is spared due to the virus needing a human body to incubate within, and the virus being released over water where it can't spread. While the virus is deadly, Mark is quarantined on Thrag's ship, and the top Viltrumite scientists and another villain named Dinosaurus help Mark survive the infection. Dinosaurus essentially kidnaps Mark from the ship as he suspects Thrag is secretly going to kill him, which he totally was going to do, by the way. And he finds out that Nolan, Mark, and Oliver are all the descendants of the former leader of the Viltrumites, Argyle. And Thrag has no plans to bow down to Nolan, who would be the rightful leader. So Dinosaurus heals Mark back on Earth. Mark eventually makes a full recovery, although for a period of time his powers were considerably weaker. Oliver feels tremendous guilt over the infection. He talks to Mark in issue 96 and explains that he is going back to Taliscria, where he plans to live from that point onward, having never really felt a connection to human beings outside of his immediate family. Oliver isn't seen again for 20 issues as he goes to Taliscria to live his life among the inhabitants. During this time, he matures quite significantly, and we see him in issue 118 where he dons a suit similar to his father's. At this point, Mark and Eve also moved to Taliscria with their child Terra after Robot had effectively taken over planet Earth. More info on that in Robot's video. The more important thing here is that Oliver has a girlfriend. Oliver and his girlfriend Haluma, who resembles a giant lobster, come over for dinner. This might seem weird to you, but keep in mind that Oliver's DNA is half insect alien. Not long after, Mark and Oliver are tasked by Alan with finding and killing Thrag once and for all, who had been weakened in a huge battle with Battle Beast that Thrag had eventually won. Mark and Oliver travel out into the galaxy searching for any sign of him, and they go back to the planet Thraxa, which you may remember was the planet Oliver originally was from. They find out that Thrag had killed Battle Beast on Thraxa and afterwards took a number of Thraxan women and children with him into space. Thrag began a plan of rebuilding his army with a race of half-breed children similar to Oliver genetically by mating with Thraxan women, and boy does he breed. This man was working overtime. Okay, so eventually the coalition of planets gets a tip on where Thrag is, and the two brothers are dispatched with an entire army. They arrive to find that Thrag had already left, but Mark continues to scout the planet, which leads him to a mysterious cave. Inside, he finds a mysterious being who transports him back in time. If you want to know all about his time travel arc, please go check out his video. When Mark returns from the past, he is shocked to find out that 5 years have gone by. Mark meets up with Oliver again, who is now looking considerably more mustached, and the two embrace despite Mark obviously suffering from some sort of PTSD. Later in this issue, it's revealed that in the years that Mark had been gone, Oliver has quietly aligned himself with Thrag, who he is now secretly reporting to as a double agent. Thrag eventually tracks down Mark and Eve thanks to insight from Oliver, who believed that Thrag would just let Mark be. I don't know why, but Thrag sends 2 of his children, Onan and Ursal, to kill Mark and his family. Thrag informs Oliver that he has located Mark and that he's going to kill him and Eve and his child for war crimes. He tests Oliver's loyalty by charging him with staying away, and if he did, he would be rewarded in Thrag's new Viltrum Empire. Oliver doesn't listen and travels to Mark's new home to let them know of the impending attack by Thrag's children, but he's too late. Onan and Ursal have arrived and are brutally attacking Mark, Eve, and their daughter. Oliver arrives just in time to stop Terra from being murdered by Thrag, who comes to the planet to oversee the execution himself. Unfortunately for Oliver, he poses no match for Thrag, who this time finally manages to kill Oliver. After Oliver's death, Thrag brutally attacks Mark and Eve, beating them to the point of near death and leaving them to die slowly. Thrag leaves, believing that Mark and Eve would surely die after sustaining such heavy injuries, but Eve's powers kick in and rebuild not only her body but also Mark's. Despite Mark and Eve surviving, this is the end of the story for Oliver, who was unable to be saved and died from his wounds inflicted by Thrag. Oliver's death serves as the catalyst for Mark to return from a self-imposed exile and rally the forces of the universe to face down and defeat Thrag once and for all. I really like Oliver. In fact, as I initially read the series many years ago, I found myself eagerly anticipating issues where he was the main focus. Oliver is just a fun character who leads to a lot of interesting twists and turns and changes within the series. He was unique and brought a lot of fun and complexity to the series, especially with his shifting alliances and how he viewed the world. But that's it for today's video. I hope you learned a lot, and if you did, please consider liking and subscribing and leave a comment below. It really does help us out. This has been Garrick with Key Issues. Thank you so much for watching, and remember the motto, it's Oliver over everything, and I'll see you guys next time.